Hello and welcome to this video. Today we're going to be discussing the Ivar, Freydis and Katia dynamic from Vikings. I stopped watching Vikings back in 2016 after Ragnar was killed. I couldn't find it in me to watch another episode, but lately I have been bombarded with videos of Ivar on YouTube and I have enjoyed watching every single one of them. I love the actor that plays Ivar. I love the character of Ivar despite his insanity. And one of the most interesting things that came out of watching season 5 and season 6 was the decision to make Katia, a lady that Ivar made in season 6, look like his wife Freydis that he was with in season 5. In a lot of the videos I watched on YouTube, there was a lot of theories as to why Ivar saw Katia as Freydis, and this video is going to be me covering the relationship between Ivar and Freydis, the relationship between Ivar and Katia, and why I believe he saw Katia as Freydis. But I would also be tackling the reason I prefer Katia to Freydis as a character. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let's get started. Ivar is a cripple. He was born that way, and so in his mind he's always had to put a little more effort to be what his brothers already are. He's always been the one to put in more work. Now Ivar is insane. There is no denying that. There is no hiding that. He has anger issues. He has several issues. That said, he always has something to prove. He always felt like he had something to prove to his mom, who always, spoiled him. His dad, who didn't accept him at first, but in the end, told him that he was going to be special and all those things. His brothers, who were complete in his eyes while he was incomplete because of a disability. One thing I want to appreciate is his acceptance. Even though he still is limited in his mind because of it, he accepts it. He accepts he's a cripple and he has to do more. Fine, it still hurts him when people tease him because of it, but it's something he's accepted. I don't know if that makes sense. He's accepted it, but it still affects him. This is another thing that's going to come into play later when I mention Freydis. But in season 3, I think it's season 3, Ivar is taken by his brothers to a slave girl. I think she was a slave girl then, Margaret. And they want him to have his first time with her, but as they went along it became obvious it wasn't happening. And Ivar is insane. His first alternative is to strangle her and make sure she tells no one. Yeah, this doesn't work out, but still, when he finally gets his head back, she calms down and she does the smart thing, which is talk her way out of being killed. He tells him that every man can have sex, every man can have babies, but it takes a lot to be the son of Ragnar. She talks him into accepting that he couldn't have sex. And I think he accepted that because she was the last woman he tried to strangle for that. When he met Freydis, he had no problem telling her that he couldn't sleep with her. The same with Katia, still the shyness, still the embarrassment, I might even say, but he didn't strangle her or demand she tells no one, so he accepted it. I mentioned that I watched a lot of videos about him and her, and I saw a lot of love and support for Freydis, so I have to put a disclaimer on here that I do not like Freydis. Do I think she deserved to be strangled? No. Do I think she should have died? Not at all. Ivar is insane, I admit it, bottom line. But I did not like Freydis at all. We're introduced to Freydis' character season 5. I'm not going to go through their wedding, their love story. I'm just going to go to the part where they're married and my problem with the character of Freydis. Now, for this, I'm going to bring Margaret back into the mix. To me, Freydis was Margaret's success. Where Margaret failed, Freydis succeeded. Because if you look at Margaret, she also wanted to be a queen, and she believed that Ivar would do that for her when they married. So she was always trying to instigate things to have him turn against Lagertha. She does this consistently, always whispering into Ivar's ear about how he could be the ruler of all of what she has because Lagertha is slipping, she's losing her power. She did all those things. Obviously, Lagertha called her out on it. But Freydis, I feel like she did the same. I'm not discrediting her love for Ivar. I think she did love him, but I feel like she was always trying to, put her place beside him. Because Ivar, to me, as well as his anger and his instability, is always looking for validation. That's what I feel. It's the same thing with the battles, wanting the fame. He wants to be validated. He's a cripple, but he wants people to know that that never stopped him from anything. And I feel like she really took advantage of this. Maybe I'm being cruel and she wasn't taking advantage, but she overdid it with all the praise. My lord, this girl would not stop.
The gods have marked you out. Your deformity means that the gods favor you especially. To me, you are a god.
She was part of the problem of what he became when he became king. I don't want to be unfair. Ivar is crazy. Maybe with or without her, he would still have been as unhinged as he was. But Ivar doesn't get a lot of people telling him what he wants to hear. He always has to prove it. The battles, arguing with his brothers, he always has to prove it. If you remember, when he finally got the contraption that allowed him to stand, you could see that it gave him an extra push of confidence. Freydis became that. She became like his contraption, something that gave him an extra push of confidence. Not even just confidence, ego. She gave him ego. When he met Freydis, she was one of the few people who always gassed him up, who always told him what he has always wanted to hear. Now, I don't have a lot of backing research, but I do know that Ragnar believed himself, I think, to be descended from gods, and so Ivar also believed he was a descendant of the gods, but that also made his brothers descendants of gods. Yet, with Freydis, this was a point she never stopped repeating. It was constant. Each chance she got, she would remind him that he was Ivar the Boneless, praise him, brought up the gods thing, as if he didn't have brothers who could also be gods. All these things. She didn't have to say those things. He was a great man. It should have stopped there. And even worse, this is where she really lost me. Remember I mentioned about him coming to terms with the fact that he could never sleep with anyone? I think he accepted that. And I also think Ivar knew very well how children were made. He knew mom and dad had to sleep together for you to be born. And since he couldn't do the sleeping together part, he could not have kids. So his whole thing about being famous, that his name will never leave the lips of people, that was how he intended to be remembered, not with kids. But then here comes Freydis, telling him that she will bear him a child.
By your blood, I will bear you a child, a son, and he too will be a god. Like you.
I remember in season 6, there was this lady Björn married who was accused of being a witch. Not accused, she was called a witch and she accepted it. And I saw her do a few rituals. Now with her rituals were very, very long. She did chants, she danced, she called out words. I think at some point she was cursing the man they left her with. She even cut her tongue and used the blood or something. She was vicious with her spells. I don't know if Freydis was a witch. I don't remember it being mentioned. It could have been something I missed, or if she even knew how to do any spells, but it is the only explanation I could conjure up in my head as to why she thought licking his blood and sleeping with someone else would equal giving him a kid. And that is where my problem with her starts. She didn't have to promise Ivar a child at all. Ivar had come to terms with the fact that he couldn't sleep with anyone, and he didn't seem to have a problem with it. He seemed content, and she just had to go the route of, I will give you a kid. Now, if she wasn't a witch, that means she knew that licking his blood would do nothing, and she didn't even still try to seduce him into sleeping with her. She just rather, you know what, licked his blood, told him she got this covered, went to sleep with some random guy. And that is where the comments I saw on her really did not sit with me. I saw a comment on a video, I don't remember which video it is, but they said that Ivar ruined her as a person. Now Freydis is not all bad. You know, I remember the speeches she gave him where she was like, wouldn't you rather be loved than feared?
Ivar, you are a god. And a merciful god will always be more popular among the common people than a vengeful god, like Odin.
But to say he ruined her, I feel like I never saw so much good in her that he corrupted. She looked like she was already on her path when she met him. She wasn't as crazy as he was, but they were equal because this girl went to promise a guy who never asked her for a pregnancy. She promised him a baby. They went to this guy, I don't even remember if I ever saw him. And I think she continued to do this until she conceived. Then what did she do after the conception? She had him killed. Oof, this is where episode 520 just snatched it for me. She had him strangled and she died strangled. Forgive me, everyone who thought she was innocent. And forgive me, everyone who thought Ivar was the one who ruined her. After that, she slept with him and killed him. There was nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, that made me think this lady wasn't on par with Ivar. Sure, she didn't burn her brother's girlfriend, but that guy didn't even look like a bad guy. He didn't look like someone who wanted anything from her. She was just quiet most of the time and did what she wanted. And she had him murdered. That means she knew the kid she was carrying wasn't Ivar's, or she believed he would think it was his since he didn't know about her licking Ivar's blood. Forgive me all who love her. I just couldn't get why she had to do that. Only for her to finally have the kid. And this is where, yes, Ivar is a monster. He left the kid to die because the kid was deformed. That guy is, Ivar is unstable. I always admit it every 5 minutes so no one thinks I am condoning his behavior. And then comes the line that made me despise her even more. I think she realized what he had done to the kid and she couldn't believe it. She was horrified. She had every right to be. It was her child. For the sake of the fact that she might have been a witch and licking his blood actually did link him to the kid, I'll call it their child. He killed their child. She had every right to be upset. But then she had the audacity, the effrontery to say,
After everything I did for you.
After everything that you did for me? What did you do for me, Freydis? Huh?
I sat there just listening to the words coming out of her mouth and I thought, no one forced you to do that. When he first met you, he gave you your freedom.
You're a free woman now. Leave.
You could have left and gone anywhere. Let's say you didn't know how far his instability went. Fine. But you got married. No one asked you to have to buff him up into being this god. No one asked you to promise him a kid. He didn't ask you. So how dare you say, after everything I have done for you, that is on you. Everything you have done is on you. You didn't have to do it. You didn't have to kill an innocent man to give him a kid he never had hopes for until the words came out of your mouth. You carry that, just as Ivar is a product of every person in his life. They made him that, but the fault is on him for choosing the path that he chose. Ivar's father told him his anger was a gift. He didn't tell him to let go of it. He didn't tell him to calm down.
I wish I wasn't so angry all the time.
Then you would be nothing.
I might have been happy.
Happiness is nothing.
I was only joking. Idiot.
That is it. They all had a hand in making Ivar, but Ivar had the choice to either use all that they have told him to be a better person or use all they told him to be what he was. He chose to be what he was. It was his choice. He can't blame anyone else for that. Just as Freydis cannot dare say, after all I have done for you, that was her choice. Which leads me to the strangling scene. And for this, I want to apologize to everyone because Freydis strangling was one of, if not the most hilarious deaths I have ever witnessed on the show. Imagine knowing your husband is crazy. You called him a monster to his brothers, but then go to him and tell him that you'll let the brothers that he's trying to keep out of his kingdom in. So she must have thought that he loved her enough to forgive her for the choice she made in the end. Yeah, he loved her, which leads to why I found that strangling scene funny.
I love you.
I was wondering why she was turning around. That must have been her confidence in his love, because she didn't question for a second why he was so calm. He got the belt around her neck, fell back to the floor and started strangling her. It wasn't funny then either. What was funny was when he started talking. This psychopath really sat there strangling this woman to death, saying,
Later, when I have time, I will sit and wait for you.
"Would you shut up, Ivar, please? Kill her in silence. She doesn't need to hear this."
I love you, Freydis. I love you, Freydis.
Ivar is a monster. I repeat it because I don't want people to think I'm condoning his actions. Why did Ivar see Katia as Freydis?
Princess.
King Ivar.
I'm just gonna tackle the theory now and then get to why I preferred Katia over Freydis later. So the theory I saw also in a comment section of one of the thousands of videos, not thousands, exaggeration, that I watched, was that the reason he saw Katia as Freydis was because of his guilt. You know, for that killing her. Season 6 showed Ivar on a trip to Kiev, and in this trip I saw a lot of women. There were, you know, people, attractions, they were showing him snakes and birds. I saw a lot of ladies looking him up and down. Even though he looked a bit wrecked, they could still see he was attractive for some reason. From what I saw, those ladies looked beautiful. They were blondes, like Freydis, and they were dark-haired ladies, like Katia. But he never once imagined Freydis' face on any of these women. So why was it that when he saw Katia, he saw her as Freydis? I believe that Katia has ethereal beauty, just goddess-like looking. And the minute he saw her, he was instantly attracted. But if you remember what he said when he was strangling Freydis, hard to forget, he said, "You were the most beautiful thing that ever happened to me. The most beautiful woman I've ever seen, the most beautiful thing, and a part of me would always love you." I feel like in that moment when he saw Katia, he felt the same attraction he had once felt for Freydis. That is how captivating she was. And the only thing he could equate to the feeling she woke in him was what he felt for Freydis, the woman he strangled, of course. And it implanted the image of Freydis in his head when it came to Katia. I don't think it was the guilt of killing her. It was probably the guilt of being attracted to someone else after he had killed her. Maybe I'm not making sense, but that's what I feel. Because why didn't he see her face in anyone else but Katia? She had to be just as beautiful and just have as much of an impact on him. If you look at it, you know, he's so adamant that she's Freydis. She doesn't sound like Freydis. She doesn't dress like Freydis. I mean, until Freydis married him, of course, but she is Princess Katia. Then when his brother Vitserk comes, he says, "You know her, you've seen her, it's Freydis." Vitserk obviously tells him, "You're still insane, Ivar." And the look on Ivar's face when he says that, I feel it's him understanding that he is the only one that sees her as Freydis. And the next episode, episode 10, when she comes to seduce him, she kisses him, you know, the wig and everything. She doesn't know then that his wife was blonde, but obviously when he first saw the curtain open, you could see for a flash second he thought that was Freydis. But he looks at her, he says no. As he's staring at her, I like to believe that he is looking to see why he just can't stop seeing her as Freydis. I'm gonna stop that theory there. I believe she was absolutely captivating. Katia, I mean. And the captivating is what made him see her as Freydis, because Freydis is probably the only woman who has ever had that effect on him. Because he was all about trying to convince her she's Freydis until she asked him, "What happened to us?" And you saw him pause. That was the only point I think his guilt on killing her came in. Before then, he was so adamant. "You are Freydis. You know you're my wife," trying to get her to understand that she was meant to be with him. Now that I've said all that, let's go to why I preferred Katia to Freydis. The baseline: Katia didn't feed anyone's ego. She didn't go the extra mile to make him feel competent. She just took it as it was, flirted with him as it was, spoke to him like she would speak to any normal man, and went with it. The best example for this that I'm going to use first is the scene between her first trying to get him to sleep with her and also Freydis' scene in episode 512. When I was watching season 6 episode 10, I just couldn't help but thinking it looked a bit similar.
Don't. You know I can't. You know I can't.
You can do anything. Trust me. To me, you are a god. Above all men. Above all others. The gods made you. Of course you can.
Kisses him and tries again. He says no. She lets it stop there. She sees, okay, it's not going to go anywhere today. I'll try again some other time. But I just love the fact that she just says, of course you can. Not because you're a god, not because you're above all men. She didn't need to put him on an ego trip. She wanted him to just believe and understand that he could do it. That was it, and that is just the baseline as to why I prefer Katia. She didn't have to put him on any pedestal or reiterate to him that he was this great thing. She treated him as a guy, as a normal man. So obviously, if you finish season 6, Katia showed him that he could. Which is funny, because Freydis had the chance to do that. She could have continued pushing. It wasn't like he yelled at her when she tried even harder. It wasn't like he became violent like it was the first time he tried to sleep with someone and realized that he couldn't. He simply always told her that she just couldn't, which was something he also repeated to Katia over and over again. But unlike Freydis, who took the route of rather just sleeping with someone else to get the child she's trying to have for validation in their marriage or whatever reason she really wanted that child, Katia just continues pushing. Now, I would never make Katia out to be perfect. I love the character, but I did have a lot of questions on why. I also think she was a spy for Deer. Not only on Oleg, but also on Ivar, just in case Ivar decided he was going to turn and fully support Oleg. Maybe they believed he would trust her enough to share that information with her, and that was the reason why she was trying to push all this, relationship on him. That was always my suspicion. But still, even with that, I prefer Katia's character to Freydis any day, because she went about it treating him as she would treat someone else. I don't know, I just preferred that more. When it comes to her feelings for him, I like to believe she actually ended up falling in love with him, which is why it looked like it hurt to tell him that she was carrying his kid, but she didn't want him to stay, and why it mattered to her that he could only see her as Freydis in the end, but we'll get to that. And then it comes to my part, my opinion about his feelings for Katia. I might be wrong. I would admit I'm a hopeless romantic, even if it's with sociopaths like Ivar. But I do believe he fell in love with her. Not her as Freydis, but her as Katia. Because if you go back to the episode with Fitzurk, it's where he gets the clearest message that she doesn't even look remotely like Freydis. If she had even the tiniest resemblance, Fitzurk would pick it up. Because he lived with them for a long time before, that they started drifting apart. He knew what Freydis looked like. He said so himself. At that moment, he knew whatever was in his mind wasn't what is in real life. And then we get to the part where he tells her,
I think I'm falling in love with you. And I don't even know who you are.
At this point, I believe he's accepted that she is not Freydis, that he only sees her as Freydis, but the attraction is still there. Remember, she is only looking like her. She doesn't behave or talk like his wife. So it makes for me the sentence, I think I'm falling in love with you, even more impactful, because he was in love with Freydis. No need to think about it. So saying I think is telling her that she as a person, who she is, he believes he's fallen in love with that, but he doesn't know who that is. And I don't think he meant just her face, also her agenda as to why she was with Oleg and still trying to get with him, as to what she wanted. I think I'm falling in love with you, but I don't even know who you are. And then I pair this with episode 14, when he goes to her and says, I love you, whoever you are. Whatever your past may be, whatever you have in your closet, I love you, whoever you are. This just makes me believe more that he fell in love with her as Katia, even though he couldn't stop seeing the face of Freydis, which, as I explained at the beginning, might just be his guilt for finally loving someone else as much as he loved Freydis. I think Kiev was a very big changing point for Ivar, because I remember when he told his dad that he's just always being angry. He didn't change too much. He still had his anger, he still had his goals, his ambition, but he was less vicious with it. I don't know if that makes sense. He got to be with the boy and build that whole relationship, the kind of son he never had. He had this entire relationship with Katia, which I think also took him on another road that he couldn't complete. He had to leave. That is where I'm going to end it. I do believe, to the bottom of my soul, that he was in love with Katia, but it was not fated to be, because he was going to leave anyway, and she wasn't going to come with him, and he wasn't going to stay in her home. They had to separate. It was a tragic love story. I take it as that, and repeat to end. Yes, I know he's crazy. Yes, I know he's unstable, but I still love the character of Ivar. Before I end, I don't think I'll ever do another Viking video. I have to give respect to Vitserk, the actor, and Ivar, and also reiterate that while I didn't quite like Björn, I did like the actor. He also played the character quite well. Everyone in this series was spectacular, and season 5 and 6 was made worth it because of it. I thought after Ragnar died I would never be able to watch it. I wasn't able to watch it, but I'm glad I went back because it was really, really entertaining. Thank you guys for joining me, and see you on our next video.